Hello and welcome to another episode of TJ Stats. My name is Tim. In honor of the Hall of Fame induction of two players, one being Fred McGriff and today's focus player Scott Rolen. Like I said, we're picking Scott Rolen as our coverage player today. And it's also why, for those watching on YouTube, that's why I've got my Cardinal garb on. So with that said, we'll get the home team feel, if you will, out of the way. Let's introduce our guy. So we've got Scott Rolen. Like I said, he was a third baseman who batted from the right side, and then, as most third basemen do, threw from the right side. Stood at a towering 6'4", weighing 245 pounds. Born on April 4th, 1975 in Evansville, Indiana. And his professional career started when he was drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies in the second round of the 93 June amateur draft from Jasper High School in Jasper, you guessed it, Illinois. Okay, so then, looks like 3 years later, he made his debut on August 1st of 96 at age 21 and a half-ish against the St. Louis Cardinals. And I highlight that because we'll get into that later. And it looks like his debut, he did get a hit. So he went 1 for 4 with a hit. And then his last game would be also against St. Louis. I didn't know that. October 3rd, 2012 at about age 37 and a half. And he had 2 at-bats that day and did not get a hit. And then it looks like they are fairly up to date, as they should be on Baseball Reference. Hall of Fame inducted as a player in 2023 this past weekend. Was voted in on the Baseball Writers Association. I forgot what the other A is. On 297 of 389 ballots. Excuse me, I don't have the math off the top of my head. But it's above 75%, because that's what you need to get into Cooperstown. Okay. Let's keep going. It looks like he exceeded his rookie status during the 97 season, which makes sense because he debuted in August of 96. So he had a little cup of coffee in 96, and then, out of the gates in 97. Okay, and his middle name is Bruce. We see that by Scott Bruce Rolen. Okay. Let's look at his accolades, and then we'll look. Actually, let's go look at his stats. Let's see the numbers that got him into the Hall of Fame, if you will. So he was a 70.1 career wins above replacement. That's solid. That's really solid. Almost 7,400 at bats. Also solid. Over 2,000 hits. Crept up towards 2,100. That's solid. Was over the 300 home run mark with 316. And was a 281 career hitter. And followed that by a little over 1,200 runs and nearly 1,300 RBIs. And this is actually a stat that's higher than I would have imagined. 118 stolen bases. Not bad for a power-hitting third baseman. And then he had an on-base percentage of 364 and a slugging percentage of 490, which equates to a 855 OPS. And then that rounds out to an OPS plus of 122. So effectively 22% above the average hitter in terms of offensive output. Okay, so now that we've got kind of a gist of his whole career, let's see some of the highlights in terms of accolades. Obviously a Hall of Famer. We've covered that. Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year. I did not know that. That'll be good to know for the Immaculate Grid challenges going forward. Am I right? 7-time All-Star. 2006 World Series champion, St. Louis Cardinals, against the Detroit Tigers. And probably the reason he got into the Hall of Fame, 8 gold gloves at third base. That's solid. Really solid. And to show you how solid it is, he was a pretty good hitter too. Only had 1 silver slugger. So, a well-rounded player from an offensive and defensive standpoint. But let's looking into his numbers. And we'll highlight these teams more as we go into his individual stats, as we always do. We'll start out with his number 6 for the Philadelphia Phillies. It is cup of coffee in 96. And then we're number 17 for the rest of his Philly tenure till 2002. and then wore 16 as a member of the Cardinals in 2002. And then the rest of his tenure with the Cardinals, 2002 to 2007, wore 27. And then he went to the Toronto Blue Jays wearing number 33. And then to conclude his career, spent a few years at the Cincinnati Reds wearing, again, his 27. So now that we've gone through some of the bio, we've gone through some of the accolades, some of his numbers, his stat line, let's dive into the specifics. Okay. So, looking at the cup of coffee he had in 96, below average offensive output with 91 OPS plus, 722 OPS, nothing to sneeze at, nothing to really brag about either. But again, 33 hits, 37 games, just small sample size, right? And then going into his first full season in 96, or 97 rather, he had a 290 or 283 average, 377 OPS. OPS pretty solid. And then rounded up to a 846 OPS and a 121 OPS plus. So starting to see those numbers go in the right direction that way. And that's when he won Rookie of the Year. So pretty solid output there. And he also had 21 home runs, 92 RBIs. 92 RBIs as a rookie. That's not anything to be upset with. 35 doubles. So, he got his extra base hits. What is that? Almost 60 extra base hits out of 159 hits. Solid ratio there. And then just kind of looking, the rest of his Phillies tenure. Let's just kind of take a peek here. Let's see. Yeah, so this is going to include some of his Cardinal stuff from the games he played in St. Louis in 2002, but he played more games, so we're going to call this close. So the rest of his Phillies tenure taken out, from basically his Phillies tenure, he was 281 batting average, which is close, if not his career numbers there, so that's solid. 372 on base percentage, so he got his walks. 508 slugging, so a little behind for elite, but 880 overall output solid. 126 plus OPS, nearly 1,700 total bases, and grounded to slightly more double plays than the number of times he got hit by a pitch. Happens. 215 doubles, nearly 1,000 hits, 164 RBIs, 23 triples. I feel like that's kind of high for a third base, but that's solid. And then 74 of his stolen bases, so he got the most of those in his early to mid to slightly upper 20s, which is solid to see. And then walks, strikeouts, about what you can expect there. So then let's go down to see, because he won, won 4 of his Gold Gloves with the Phillies and won his only Silver Slugger in that year where he split time with Philly and St. Louis. So that's interesting to note. So then looking at his Cardinal career, let's just start right here. Okay, so he came in, wow, in 55 games he had 44 okay. 44 RBIs, 14 home runs in a 55-game stretch to finish out the 2002 season for the Cardinals. Batted 278, 354 on base percentage, 139 OPS plus, which had matched a career high going into his career there. So then let's go into where he had the streak of 4 All-Star appearances for the Cardinals. So looking at that, let's look at the individual seasons before we look at the accumulate numbers. So let's see, 154 games played. So he played 142 games for 3 out of those 4 years. Looks like 05, he was banged up for a majority of the year, but in years where he wasn't banged up, he had a 286 batting average, a 314. We'll dive more into that 2004 season because that looks like that was the highest he got voted on MVP, being the top 4 there. But yeah, going back to the batting averages for his hot streak there for the Cardinals, 286, 314, skip 05 so he's injured, and a 296 batting average there. Oh man, these on base percentages are elite too. 382, 409, 369. Again, I'm skipping 05 because he was hurt. Looks like he was hurt after. Looks like he just, he missed 2/3 of the year. So like you're not gonna get any traction there. So I'm gonna leave that out. But OPS pluses of 138, 158, and 126. Those are all elite. Actually in 2004 he had an OPS over 1,000 at 1,007. That's really solid. It was also a year he had 30 plus home runs and doubles, 124 RBIs, 157 hits. So almost averaging an RBI for every time he got a hit. Over 100 runs. Looks like it was one of 2 times he had done that. So let's dive into, just overall. We'll add 07 in there as well. Yeah. So adding, full seasons, taking out that 2002 season because that was just, the third of a year where he came in over from Philly. Effectively, his Cardinal tenure was. I'm sorry, we can actually look at that here at the bottom. Excuse me. So looking at his Cardinal tenure, batted 286, 370 on base percentage, 510 slugging. So all really in line with his 7 years in Philly. So he really had that solid 13-year stretch where just a smidge down, a 300 hitter, 370 on base percentage, 500 slugging. So right around the high 8s, close to 900 OPS, and then OPS plus, averaging 25 points above average total bases. Killed it there. Let's see. Had 111 of his home runs in St. Louis, which is a solid number. 173 doubles. So he actually had more success in terms of accumulative numbers in Philly, which makes it interesting why he went with St. Louis in terms of who he had on his cap, on his plaque going into Cooperstown. But I think that the MV3, kind of era, winning the World Series, being in 2 of 3 World Series, being highly sought out World Series contenders year in, year out. That MV3 making up of Scott Rolen, obviously, Jim Edmonds, and then the eventual Hall of Famer Albert Pujols. So I think that just kind of brings it all why he picked St. Louis, because if you look at it, his numbers, a lot of it, the cumulative numbers are higher because he played longer in Philly. And then, in terms of batting average and a lot of those, they're, like we said, they're all about the same. So he was the same guy throughout. I think he actually won, looks like, he won more Gold Gloves as a member of the Phillies as well. So, that's something to consider as well. Technically 2002, so it's like 3.5, right? Because he won a Gold Glove the year he was with Philly and St. Louis, staying in the National League. That definitely helped his case there, I would imagine. But then let's, take a foot off the gas here and look at the rest of his career. He did play for the Toronto Blue Jays for parts of 2008. It looks like 2008, parts of 2009. So that accumulates to, those career norms, about a 360 on base percentage, 380 or 285 batting average, 91 walks to 133 strikeouts, solid ratio there. Averaging 22 home runs, 117 RBIs, that's solid. I'm sorry, those were his accumulative, excuse me. So averaging 11 home runs, 58 RBIs, a solid part-time player, or just a solid veteran at that point, right? Being in his mid to low to mid 30s. So averaging 15 home runs a season, 78 RBIs. So that's really solid to see there. So those were his per 162 average. He missed some time there. He had a shoulder injury at some point. I was hearing them talking about it when I was watching a video earlier this week. That really would have beefed up his numbers and probably been a more surefire Hall of Famer rather than taking this long for him to get in. But injuries happen. But guys that have serious shoulder or elbow or any kind of serious joint related injuries and still get in the Hall of Fame, that just speaks to how hard they played the game, and you just gotta love it. So. Solid little tenure in Toronto. And then let's take a look at this Cincinnati tenure. Looks like 2009, 2012. Again, we'll have some Toronto stuff thrown in there, but that's fine. Let's see. Accumulated 44 home runs in that span. This is where he's maybe becoming more of a reserve type player, averaging 104 games. So not playing every day. It's probably some of those injuries factored into it. But still getting doubles, getting his home runs, RBIs, 276 batting average, still solid. The OPS is dropping just a little bit. OPS plus dropping, 10, almost 20 points, but still above average hitter. Mid to late 30s. Injuries at this point are accumulating. Like there's only so much you got left in the tank at that point. So I mean that's just how it goes. But overall pretty solid. And then like we said, finished his career as a Red against the Cardinals in 2012. So that accumulates the career, at least from an individual season perspective, for Scott Rolen. So now, as I catch my breath here, as always, appreciate you guys hanging through while I blur through the stats and whatnot. Let's take a look at some of these wins above replacement awards, or I'm sorry, wins above replacement levels throughout his career. So, according to this, they say if you're 8+, it's an MVP type season. 5+ is an all-star, 2+ is a starter. Anything below that, we don't really want to talk about. So we're looking at these 5+ ones. He had a 6.7 in 98 with the Phillies. That was his second full season. He had a 5.6 in his second to last season with Phillies. And then 2002, it looks like if you accumulate that, what is that, a 6.4? So that's solid all-star level. 2003, down to a 4.7. 9.2 in 2004. They're saying that is MVP territory by at least 1.2 wins above replacement. But he was fourth. Let's see, who won the MVP that year? Okay, one of the Barry Bonds was. And we were talking about that big three. You look at 3, 4, 5. You had Albert Pujols, Scott Rolen, Jim Edmonds. And actually, if you look, J.D. Drew was sixth, who was a Cardinal that was used to go get Adam Wainwright back in like 04, 05 era. So you're just a smidge from having 4 of the top 6 MVP guys right there. Let's see, Scott Rolen. What kind of numbers was he up against? Yeah, I mean, Barry Bonds, he led the league in batting average. Yeah, he had an OPS of 1,400. He had a 10.64. Adrian Beltre had a 9.64. So, you had 2 guys above him, and he had a 9.2. So, it was just the wrong year for it to be his best year. That's just how it goes. But anyway, let's get back to Scott Rolen here. Let's see, back to WAR. Yeah, 5.6 and okay, yeah, 9.2. We talked about that. 5.9 in 2006, solid. Let's see, 2009 for that Toronto Cincinnati combo. He was a 5.2, so that's all-star caliber, right? 4.1 in 2010, and then things kind of fell off from there. So overall, got to that 70.1 that we had talked about earlier. So what they're saying is 162 games. Okay, so he averaged 5.6 WAR a season. So they're saying he averaged being an all-star. That's with a lot of injuries in there. So that's a lot. Let's see. You guys don't want to look at advanced batting. You guys don't want to look at ground ball percentage, line drive, blah, blah, blah. We don't want to look at that. Postseason. This is what we're going to talk about. Okay. Let's see. 2002, he helped the Cardinals win the NLDS by batting .429 in 2 games. Okay. Very nice. And then the NLCS against the San Francisco Giants. He didn't play in that series. I imagine injury, but I don't know that for sure. And that was the year the Giants ended up losing to the Angels later on that year. Then 04 beat the Dodgers. He actually didn't get a hit at all. Hit 6 walks though. Okay, so they pitched around him. Let's see, and then batted .310 in the NLCS against Houston. That went to 7 games. That's the. No, okay. I was wondering. No, 06 is when Beltran struck out against Atlanta, because that's when Beltran was on the Mets. This is when Beltran spent the half a season on the Astros before he signed with the Mets. Sorry, just had a couple chronological things backwards in my head. But yeah, batted over 300, helping the Cardinals beat the Astros there. And as I imagine most of the Cardinals did in the World Series against the Red Sox in 04, didn't really do anything. It was Boston's year. We're not going to talk about it a whole lot more. 06, another World Series year for the Cardinals. And 3 games against the Padres. Bet under 100, so not great. And then against the Mets, 238, also not great there. Tigers always stepped it up, 420 on batting average. Had a 1 of 5 career playoff home runs. He had 3 in that series. Going back to the 04 NLCS against the Astros. Just popped on here, seeing the 3 home runs there. So that's interesting. But anyway, coming back to 2006, beating the Detroit Tigers in the World Series, batting .421. Very solid. Didn't win the MVP because that was David Eckstein. But that's just how it goes. 2010 didn't really do a whole lot with the with the Cincinnati against the Phillies. I think that was actually the series that Roy Halladay actually got the no-hitter in that game, or in that series. So he was part of that demise. And then 2012 against the Giants, lost, batted .250. Knocked in an RBI, had some hits, so fairly solid. Overall, not a great playoff hitter, but I mean, playoffs, it's such a crapshoot. You never know what you're going to get. So that's all right. And then defensive stats, we don't have to really look into that. Just remember, 8 Gold Gloves, solid guy, big reason why he got into the Hall of Fame. So you got to love that. Let's see. Ooh, this is always fun to see if you've ever played anywhere. So he solely only played third base. He was a pinch hitter a couple times, a pinch hitter once when he was 22. Wow. I would have thought he may have played first, just like in a pinch, maybe a DH for the little time he was at Toronto. That's interesting. Only played third base. Interesting. Over 2,000 games. Or 2,000 appearances, I should say. Crazy. Okay, so now let's get to appearances on leaderboards, awards, and honors. So that baseball Hall of Fame percentage needed 75% again. He got 76.3, so just beat it by a smidge. And let's see. Let's look at the other 5 times that he was voted on. So the first year, if I remember right, you have to get at least above 5% to stay. And then I think they shrunk it down from 15 down to 10 years where you can be on the ballot. Something like that. So it went from about 10% to 17%, and really gained some momentum. The COVID year, 35%, getting to 52%, and then last year, 63%, and then got that 76.3 that's bolded on Baseball Reference, enshrining him for Cooperstown. Love it. So that's how he got there. The 7 All-Star appearances. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 10 and 11. The years he did that. We talked about the Rookie of the Year. MVP shares. So the 4 times he was in the MVP conversation, if you will, was 20th, 24th, 4th. We highlighted 2004. We talked about that. And then 14th, 2010, which is actually interesting. And this one of his last years, which is cool. Won the 8 Gold Gloves. Talked about that. Silver Slugger got that in 2002. Was a member of the Phillies. Talked about that. Talked about WAR. He is, in terms of position players, career 69th all time, which tells me he should be in the Hall of Fame. And he actually had 4 seasons where he was in the top 10 in positional WAR. So that's position players based on WAR that ranks per season. In 98, so he had 8th place, 7th place, 3rd place, and 6th place. Those 4 years where he was in the top 10 there. Defensive WAR, or I'm sorry, that's overall WAR. Offensive WAR, He had 2 seasons he was in the top 10. It was 03 and 04. 04, not a shock considering that was his career year. In the defensive war, he was 9th, 6th. And in 2004, he was the most valuable player, according to WAR, on defense. So if the Platinum Glove Award given out by Rawlings went that far back, probably would have won in 04, just going off that number alone. And then, let's see. On-base percentage, we can talk about that. Blah, 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 blah. There's all this other stuff. Top 10 in walks, top 10 in on-base plus, or OPS rather. That's getting real nitty-gritty. Let's see. Oh, double plays turned. Double plays turned as the third baseman. He's 14th all the time at 355. That's interesting. That is interesting. And then total zone runs as a third baseman, which I believe, don't fault me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that means like how much runs you're preventing from scoring based on how much ground you're covering. So in 2002 and 2008, he was first in that category. Saved 15 runs, total zone runs, whatever. In 2002 and then 2008, saved 14 again. Both led the league both times he did that. See, now I'm seeing range factor. Okay, now these are getting into sabermetric numbers where everybody's going to probably fall asleep at this point, so we don't even need to go there. Okay, so this is interesting. Looking at similar players, they've got 10 in there, some of which include Sean Green, Bobby Bonilla, Aramis Ramirez, Matt Holliday. Interesting. And the only one that's a Hall of Famer of this top 10 is Ron Santo. Interesting. Let's see. Okay. Let's look at transactions. So if we look at these transactions, he was drafted by the Phillies, second round. We knew that. Okay. We talked about this in the Policio Polanco episode. Was traded by the Phillies with Doug Nickel in cash to the Cardinals for Policio Polanco, Bud Smith, and Mike Timlin. So that's how they got the Scott Rolen portion of the MV3 ingrained into St. Louis. I believe he was the second one because they drafted Pujols. Pujols was a rookie in 01. They got Rolen in 02. And I think Edmonds came in 02, if not 03. So, second or third there. Then part of another significant trade in the winter of 08, going to the 08 season, traded by the Cardinals straight up to the Toronto Blue Jays for Troy Glaus. And I remember him for some time there. Okay. Another significant trade he was part of. This one I didn't realize either. Trade deadline of 09. Traded by the Blue Jays to the Reds for Josh Rennick, Zach Stewart, and Edwin Encarnacion. Good old Parrot Man for my Toronto fans out there. And then 2012 granted free agency. So looks like he didn't really ever sign any free agent contracts to go anywhere. Sounds like he traded and then just extended contracts, I'm guessing. So, and then we'll just kind of finish up by looking at how much money he accumulated in about 15 years of service. Accumulated $117 plus million. So he's doing well from a financial aspect according to those numbers. But just kind of looking at the rest of what we've got here. These are questions we've all pretty much answered already. So as I scroll back to the top slowly to not make our YouTube people dizzy. So that is the career of now Hall of Famer as of 2023 with that 76 plus percentage votes to get in. Scott Rolen, St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame. Hopefully they retire his number and do the right thing there. I think they will, but too early to tell. There's still a chance for them to do that, right? But as always, feel free to check out these episodes, whether you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening to the car via Amazon Music or Spotify. And if you're listening to this and saying, I wish he would do blank, this player, feel free on Twitter or just contact me some way or fashion. Give me suggestions. I'm looking for players to dive into. Obviously, I want to cover players that you guys find interesting. But we're going to keep going. We're trying to alternate between hitters and pitchers, but this was, again, Scott Rolen, Cardinals Hall of Famer, and one of the best defensive third basemen of all time. As always, appreciate you for joining. My name's Tim, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.